saying what's your budget is like saying how much money do you have in your wallet?
Yeah,
how much does it cost to do this? Well, how much money do you have in your wallet? I'll tell you what we can do for that.
Welcome to the Creative Slash Podcast, where we explore what happens when creativity collides with everything else. I'm Brad Woodard, and I'm here with my co-host, Dustin Lee. Whether you're an artist looking to grow your following or you're just curious about where creativity can take you, this is your weekly dose of real talk about making it as a creative human. Just a heads up, this episode was recorded back in February. It's one of our earliest episodes that we ever recorded, so when you hear about the LA fires, it's not new ones, it was the ones back in January and February. We just really enjoyed this conversation. We wanted to share it with you. It's all about how as creatives can oftentimes undervalue our work. Dustin shares his perspective of someone who hires artists, and then you have my perspective as an illustrator who struggles to put a number sometimes on my work. Putting a price on creative work can be messy, uncomfortable, and sometimes just flat out confusing. So if you've ever second guessed your worth as a creative, this is the perfect conversation for you to listen in on. So let's jump right into it. Enjoy.
Before we get into talking about the actual subject today for the podcast, you were gone last week, which I did not know was going to happen. You had went to Disneyland. Right now, as we're recording this, they're just recovering from these fires down there. So please tell me, how is Disneyland after, I don't know, like so much crazy stuff just happened down in California? And how do they make it feel happy down there when just a short drive away there's total destruction?
Yeah. I thought about that.
Campfire there? When you're there, doesn't it smell like people are roasting like heaven, like going camping?
No, and it was clear skies. It was beautiful blue skies. So it was confusing to me. It's like, I did have those conflicting thoughts, actually. I was like, man, we're going to be those people that are taking advantage of like a huge disaster in that area. So no one's probably going to be flying in there at this time. Tickets were super cheap. Flights were dirt cheap. The hotels, everything. And I thought we were going to go into like, just like a war zone, it was going to look like,
it was just empty because everyone knew it was just so inappropriate to go to Disneyland at this time.
Yes.
That
I did feel
it was
bad.
just you guys and then like one other like Disneyland fanatic. Everyone else knew that they were just going to get canceled if they went into Disneyland at this point.
Yes, the optics weren't ideal, but what happened, and it was like just out of the blue, to make a long story really short, we have a new puppy, 5 months old. Right on Christmas, she ate an ornament, one of our Christmas ornaments off the tree, and had to go to the hospital, had to get it surgically removed, and it was like $3,000. And we had been planning, if you can't tell, we're the Japanese influence here. We were planning a Japan trip. That explains the shirt. We were planning a Japan trip because my wife lived there for a little bit when she was a teenager, and we wanted to go visit. And anyways, that plan was supposed to be this year. That trip was this year. And so it got thwarted by our new puppy, depleting some of those funds. So we ended up just finding, like, all of a sudden we looked at tickets, and my wife's always searching for vacation stuff. And anyway, the whole thing was, everything was dirt cheap. It was like $4 a day for our car rental. We were in a cheap motel. We did everything as cheap as humanly possible. We all fit everything in one suitcase to get there because we flew Frontier and they charge you so much for anything extra. And anyway, it was a great experience. Long story short, there was nothing happening there. There were still a ton of people at Disneyland. It was still magical and all those things. We've only gone a few times in our life, so it was still very magical and no smoke. I was very surprised. Even when we flew in at night, the pilot told us to look out the window for the fires, and we never saw them. So doesn't mean they're not there, but I think they're getting under control. I think that's why there's not as much of an issue. And wind blows north. The wind has been blowing north, so Anaheim is south of there, and so it wasn't as, I don't think there was anything going on down there.
It makes sense. And you know what, like all jokes aside about like it being like just not cool to like go down to Disneyland during fires, like that's of course silly, right? Because like it's not like Disneyland is like, I don't know, like a fire department like in their spare time. Like business goes on, right? Like are you supposed to shut down your business and not do business because something happens? Of course you continue doing things and you do your best to support things, but I mean, if we all stopped everything when something happened, it could be argued that could be worse for the economy and
totally
tax revenue to pay for things. I don't know what I'm talking about, but you get what I'm saying.
For sure. So what you're saying is I'm a good person for going because I was helping, they could be losing a lot of business in that town.
I mean, yeah, some of those people were probably impacted by the fire that work there. Like they need, they need like income and different things going on, like just as much as always. I mean, I don't know. It's complicated, right? But like
it is.
But of course, like I understand it's totally normal to go to Disneyland at any time. What else would you do?
Yep.
Anyways, thanks for sharing. Maybe next time you can tell me if you want the Haunted Mansion. Love to hear about that. But
sure, we'll deep dive later
because they did new technology on it. I heard.
Yeah, on all this stuff.
Yeah,
everything. Okay. Okay. One last thing I will say: artists. This is a creative podcast, so the artists are gonna love this bit. The Toontown has never been my favorite. Again, we've only been 3 times, but Toontown is just never my favorite. But they added a Mickey Mouse ride in there, and the artwork is from the new Mickey Mouse series. It's a whole new illustration style for Mickey, the new animated series that they've done. And, the whole ride incorporates all their new technology and it's crazy. It's really cool. The artwork's amazing. They made like a little faux museum for Mickey and all of his stuff that he's done. And it was really incredible. So if you are at Disneyland and you haven't checked it out, I think it's brand new. Check it out. You will absolutely love it, especially the illustrators listening and watching.
Well, then speaking of that, like maybe this is not a perfect segue, but this is a great time for you to read the intro because we are talking about a subject where people value or don't value themselves, and one group that does value themselves is Disney. In fact, some would argue they overvalue themselves.
That's exactly right. Well, yeah, according to how much I paid on food that whole time, yeah, definitely overvalued themselves.
$7 bananas. Yeah. Well, we had started talking about this last time. This actually comes up, I feel like, all the time and just like small talk, but we were talking about it because like I was telling you, this is kind of what triggered it, is I was telling you that like it's oftentimes you don't even have to negotiate with an artist that's doing work for you because they come in so low that you don't have to. So for people that don't know, Brad is an illustrator and designer. I was one, but I largely hire illustrators and designers now. And as an example, a couple months back, I was hiring a illustrator to do some regular pieces of work, and I think I offered them around. It's a very simple thing. I won't get into exactly what it was, but it's very simple. Literally, just like recording quick bursts of their work, and I offered I think like $100 or $125 per thing they were doing, and they said no, I could never do that. That's crazy. 50. That's all I could do. I could only do 50. It would be crazy to do something else.
And to take more than 50? Is that what they're saying?
Yeah, like I offered them what I thought was reasonable, fair for both of us, and they then lowballed their own selves and asked for less. And that's not the first time that's happened. I've seen that happen a lot of times, and most of the time I don't argue because I'm not in the business of negotiating against myself to make things more expensive. You know what I mean? Like, of course I want them to do work that they get paid an amount they're happy for, that they can live off of, and that they can enjoy and focus on the work and not feel like they're worried about their bills as they do work for me. So I want that for people, but at the same time, right? Like you don't go around asking someone how much, I don't know, like a taco is from a street vendor and they say $2 and you're like, no, that's obscene. Let's do $6.
Let me give you more.
So I would love to know from your perspective, like, where does this come from? Why does this happen?
That's an interesting scenario though. Cause I feel like I maybe felt those feelings, but I haven't said them out loud. You know what I mean? What the artist, that interaction that the artist had, like, I wouldn't have been like, no, I'll give me less. Like, I haven't really done that, but I have felt like holding back like what I even suggest as a price, as a budget, because I'm not valuing myself. And the reason I know I was undervaluing myself is because my wife, Crystal, if anybody are familiar, she ran Brave the Woods for, 12 years until I recently got representation. But yeah, so she would always be the one, the person in my ear saying like, that's not enough. Like, you need to be paid more and don't take that job for that price or whatever. So I started to realize, and other people, once I got this rep, they started telling me what my value was as well. And I think there's just, I don't know. I never feel like, I don't know what the pricing is difficult anyways with creatives, because it's all subjective, like, and it's all dependent on the artist. Like, you can base it off of like how long you've been doing a job. Now there are some things that you can say, oh yeah, like a cover for a magazine. It used to be like, there used to be very set prices that I was very familiar with. It was like, or like a quarter page spot that was like $500 in most magazines, or like $2,000 for a cover or whatever it is. And I don't know if it's changed a whole lot now, but those are pretty straightforward. But there's a lot of things where they're just like, hey, how would you, when you're saying, how do you value your time like that? Like if you're going to be creating something that's not so out of a box, I don't know. I always feel like I don't want to like put people out, and I don't know where that feeling comes from, but I do feel like, am I worth that? Sometimes I compare myself maybe to other artists, and I'm like, I'm not that good, so I wouldn't charge that price. I would charge this price, or I don't do this all the time. I don't do this as much as I do other things. For example, like logos and things and branding. I find myself lowballing a lot on those projects because I get less of them than I do my illustration work, which doesn't mean I'm worse at it or I should value myself less, but it's just, I don't know. I don't fully know.
There's some weird things, psychological things happen here. Cause you'll also hear, maybe we can piece these pieces of the puzzle together. There's also something that happens where you'll say you want something done. And I feel like this is tied to the dysfunction of the whole thing. You'll say you want something done and they say, what's your budget? I've heard so many people explain to me why they do that. They'll, we ask what your budget is. So, we know how much we can do it and how we can get to wherever. But come on, saying what's your budget is like saying, how much money do you have in your wallet? How much does it cost to do this? Well, how much money do you have in your wallet? I'll tell you what we can do for that. And you're like, just, I told you the goals I have. Tell me how much it costs to achieve that goal. And then let's go from there. You know what I mean? It feels like a weird standoff happening, and that's tied to it too. And I think that's partially tied to it because people are deferring, or they don't want to tell you a price because it's hard to say a high price. You might say a price that, that makes someone angry, or they don't like you, or they decide they're not going to work with you and that you're out of their range. And then you lost the job and you need the money. If you ask them their budget, it feels like a very convenient way to find out exactly how much you can say that you'll charge that they'll accept.
Like, how much is in your wallet? It's like, I have $100. Like a crazy coincidence, but this actually costs $100. Like,
right.
what?
And for people saying, oh, well, that's not how that actually works. It may not be always, but in my experience, anytime I've told someone what my budget is, they always match it to that budget.
I mean, why would you not? I mean, I don't. I try not to, because I try to be as like honest as possible. Like, it really stresses me out. I think that's another part of it. For me personally, I feel like there's a layer of like, I don't want to be dishonest. I don't want to overvalue myself and then have people like have these crazy expectations to be like, oh, you're charging me $20,000. I better get my $20,000 worth out of this. And then if you lower that price, there's less pressure on you to perform. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, it's like an athlete getting like a Supermax deal. It's like, oh, now you have to perform. Like, you can't, now you're getting these hundreds of millions of dollars. Like you have to take this team to the championship or whatever it is, They always talk about that pressure it puts on like an athlete or something like that. I feel like that just on a very, very small level, I feel like sometimes I put that pressure on myself, and I'm like, if I do charge that, what is it saying about me? Am I that arrogant to say that I should be paid $50,000 for this brand? And it's a lot of pressure on the artist, because the artist is also guessing, because we can offend people, or people don't even bat an eye. Like, for example, I can give a quote to like a major company with a huge budget. Like, I've had projects where I've said like, that'll be $25,000. And they're like, what? I'm like, $25,000. And then they're like, and I'm like, oh shoot. Then all night the next day until I hear back from them, like, I blew it. I asked for too much money. I got greedy. Why was I doing that? Blah, blah, blah. Go down this whole path. Then they come back to me and they'll be just so like, cool. Yeah, let's go ahead and get started. I'm like, shoot, I undervalued myself. If they come back with no like issues at all. It's usually like I underbid. And so they're just like, yep, no, that's fine. I'm like, crap. But I've done it the other way too, where I've said a high price. I'm like, okay, this is like $5,000 for this logo, which I don't think is like, or a brand. And I'm like, that's not a huge price for a brand and for a company. And I've had some companies be like, whoa. I wasn't even in that ballpark. There's no way we can work together. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, did I offend them? Like, I don't know. There's a lot going on in your head. There's a lot of pressure as an artist to put a number on your work. So I tend, and what we've been told, I feel like, is to try to get the budget out of people and then see where you guys can meet. So I'm guilty of that. I try to get the budget out. I don't do that anymore with our rep, but before I remember doing that a lot, saying, you tell me your budget and then I'll tell you, but not to screw them over. I just wanted to do that because I hate valuing myself that much. That part is
right.
such
I think
drag.
that a lot of times I can't speak for I'm just a small business, right? So the way I probably determine what is a good price or what I can do is very different than how Disney or something like that determines, sure. Right? I would assume Disney just tells you the terms. They're just like, we're doing this, and if you don't want to, then we have about 5,000 people in line that will, and so you do it. But for myself, like, I'm doing the same thing. I want the person to tell me, I'm like, I need this. How much does it cost to do that? And you feel like there's going to be a certain price to it because you assume the person knows I need to make this much a month. Here's how many hours I typically work in a month on a project. Here's how much time I'm not getting paid when I'm doing marketing through LinkedIn or through Instagram or through networking or going to events. And you can do the math on those numbers, and you can have a goal for how much you need to make to support your family or support yourself and do your retirement and savings and all those things. And you can come to a number and be like, this kind of thing takes about this much time. This is how much it costs. And part of what people pay for is they pay for your dead time when you're on Instagram or when you're on LinkedIn or when you're networking. That is part of the fee because you have to do that to get business. But I think there's this weird culture mixed in where sometimes you'll hear, I don't want to bring up any specific names, but there's kind of like a weird bro culture or maybe it's not a bro culture, but where people just are trying to charge obscene amounts. One time I was on a group with a bunch of people and someone was bragging about how and it did feel like they were bragging to me. Maybe they weren't. They were like, I don't do branding for anything less than $20,000. They're like, basically they had done one job for $20,000 where they did branding. And that doesn't tell me that you're worth 20,000. All that tells me is that you got one sucker to spend 20,000 for some branding. And this person was brand new. Like, they really were not delivering anything that was worth $20,000 in my opinion. So it's mixed. You get a mixed thing.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up because you have to remember, like, it's just, this is everything you're asking me. I don't want to overgeneralize for all creatives. Like, this is their experience because, like you said, there are some very, very confident folks out there who are totally fine charging astronomical numbers, and they're probably getting them. And maybe it's that situation where it's like, hey, you say that number to everybody and you get like 2 of them, but they make up for all the rest. And I'm just going to do the low number and get a ton of different jobs. Cause you also put the value on, like, do people, like, how many jobs you lose? Like, what's the attrition on your,
That's a good point. Yeah.
On your project referrals or requests, potential clients. And that number is kind of scary when you're just finding a ton of jobs just falling through, or people ghosting you after you give them your budget, all that kind of stuff. That wears on you. And then you feel like, oh, all the pressure is now for me to land that white whale, right? Like,
yes.
That's a lot of pressure. So sometimes I'll just lower the price so that I have work constant. Like,
yes. Yeah.
Oh, does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And that made me like think of, I've had people where I feel like they really pushed for a higher amount and they really tried to push me to as much as I could possibly spend without feeling like there's no way I'm going to make money. Like, as a business owner, I'm always thinking, if I pay for this with my other costs, am I going to get more money back than I spent so I make a profit and I can continue to live another day as a business? And sometimes you feel like they're pushing you right to the edge where it's such a gamble, where you're so not sure if you can make money. And typically, paradoxically, those people oftentimes do not deliver the best work.
Interesting.
The work is not as good, and I never, ever hire them again. And oftentimes the people I won't name anybody. And
say
like,
their names.
I won't. I wish I could though.
Kidding.
I wish I could, because there's so many great people I've worked with where they've done it for such a reasonable amount, not stupid amount, not a foolish amount, but like a very reasonable amount. And they just seemed like generally like, I'm excited to do this. I have to make a certain amount of money to pay my bills and to live comfortably. And so I have to charge you this. But I'm excited to do it. And here's what I can do it for. And they talk in such a genuine way about it that you feel like they're like, hey, I like you. I want to do this. And I want to get paid something that makes it so I can put money in savings and so I can pay my bills and do all my things. And that's exactly what I want for them too. And you can tell they're like, I want you to kill it with what you're doing too. And those are the people where I will call them. I mean, some of them for years, actually now, like for a decade. There's people you'll go back to time in and time again, and you're happy to pay them because, you know, even if something went wrong, it had nothing to do with them not caring. It's just that you can't always deliver the perfect thing. But there's something to be said about that. The fact that the people that are oftentimes the best and oftentimes the most well-known in the industry do not charge the highest rate in the industry. They don't typically charge something ridiculous. They charge a reasonable amount.
And it's not reflective of their skill, clearly. But there's also other factors that go into price, like how fast do you want this? Like, that's going to be way more expensive if you're going to try to rush it over the weekend or something when I don't work, or it's just like cuts that timeline down a ton. There's so many other factors I feel like that come into play for the pricing for me. Like if it's an organization that I care about, like I'm working with this. I just had a call this morning with a gal who started a nonprofit, and it's for an amazing cause that was born out of like a terrible tragedy in her life, and she didn't want people to experience the same thing. And I'm like so proud to be a part of it. And the money isn't as important when it comes down to things. When I care about something so much, and I know. Like I'm invested, right? Like this matters to me. This needs to exist, and I want it to have a good brand so that it exists beyond, just like a year or whatever, like they typically do. So there's lots of other reasons. Like I change my prices. I don't like to just change my prices per person. Like, it's like I could do the same amount of work for like a big company and you charge so much more. Because they expect that. And then they'll bring it out and they'll say like, hey, we have 10 grand to give to this. Another person's like, hey, I only have like 2 grand. And I'm like, well, I'll still do it. And I'll put the same amount of effort and love into it and all the same time, but it's just different scenarios. It brings different things to me. So like it's the value is not just the money. So for me, if I want continued work, you and I have worked together, and I did like live drawings, and we had like kind of maybe we had a contract about it, like how many, like I would do so many a month or something like that. We did that for a really short amount of time, but the value, I was trying to figure out a price for that, and we had to come up with something that matched how much effort I was putting in before the live, and then I was putting into the live. And is that going to bring me something? If it brings me a lot of followers and work out of that, and it gives me an excuse to like get paid for time drawing, then I could lower that price. And you promised me that I would have more, so that I can lower my price some more. So I feel like there's always room for like negotiation. And I like the point that you made about having like feeling like we're invested, and I can feel invested if, if the situation's right. That's why I like to have like negotiations on price. And I'm like, okay, if you can't meet this price, if it's too much, tell me why it's too much. And then also we can do other things, like give me a longer deadline, give me a longer leash or whatever, make me care about it.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think there's two types of situations that happen. There's ones where like right now you're assigned to Closer and Closer represents you. So they're dealing with all your negotiations about money and things like that. So there's that kind of scenario. And in that kind of scenario, the negotiation, I would imagine, is very different than if someone is to be, if you're not represented and they contact you. In one, you kind of, I feel like, have to be like a little more aggressive about what you're willing to do, and you have to be willing to walk away. But I feel like most people listening are not represented people with with all of that craziness going on. In fact, very rarely, I think I've worked with people with representation twice, 3 times in the past 10 years. And I've worked with some really big people. And I feel like most of the time it would just have been so much better off. And the relationships that always worked out were the ones where price was not the first thing that was talked about. The first thing that was talked about was mutually being excited.
Yeah.
And then when price came up, it felt really natural. And they would just be like, hey, so what can you do for this? I'm excited to do this. Let's make this work. And it didn't feel like you were holding your cards and they were holding their cards close to their chest and were desperately trying to, on the count of 3, tell me your number. It was just, you felt like they cared enough that you could tell them what your number was and they could tell you what their number was. And you could work around it and say, well, that's a little high, but like I've had plenty of times where I might be like, that's a little high. For me, but how about this? Like, let's do that. And then would you be open to talking to me for the next project about a little lower number if you can assess how much time it truly took you, et cetera, right? And they'll be like, sure, I'll do it for that price this time. And I'm open to like adjusting and vice versa. There's been times when they've been like, you know what, let me do it a little lower for you this time. And like, because like, it sounds like you want to work together, like on a regular basis, I'm happy to like talk about it after you've like seen what I'm doing. And they do great work and then you pay them more and you're happy to because they do a great job and you make money because of them.
Yeah. I like that idea. I mean, that's something I try to preach and do as much as I can. Is like, I like to be invested in the stuff that I'm working on. It just makes me, the work is better because I'll be, if I'm invested, that benefits you. Like I've really tried to curate the type of work I do to get to that point. Now I feel like I'm at the point now where I'm getting, clients are coming to me with this nonprofit stuff. They're coming to me with things for like in the kids realm that I really like to do. They like to, anything related to nature, conservation efforts. I'm working with the Nature Conservancy right now. Again, and it's the first time I loved working with them and I get to work with them again. And they have no question about my commitment to their causes or the project itself, because it's just right up my alley, not just style wise, but I chose those things because I love them and I care about them. And I tried to fill my portfolio. I've kind of constantly go through my portfolio and pull out the stuff that doesn't matter as much to me over the years and just try to keep the stuff in there that matters that I want. And I feel like I'm getting to a really sweet spot where when people come to me, I really care about, I'm really invested. They're coming to me about fly fishing. I'm like, okay, we could talk fly fishing. I love this. And you could probably pay me partially in gear, right. Like there's other ways, my wife hates when I do that, but, there's definitely ways to feel invested. So I feel like that's a really good nugget, to take away is just like, make sure the work that you're doing, like the more you line it up with stuff that you care about, easier everything goes, the job, the pricing, everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think the thing with the gear and things like, of course, I know Crystal. So Crystal is very savvy about that. And I think it strikes a perfect balance. It does strike a perfect balance because she's very well grounded in the reality of the situation. And she, obviously loves you and wants to make sure that, you and your family are getting what they deserve. But like, it's balanced out nicely by the fact that like, there's also some consideration for other things. At least when you weren't represented, I think now.
It gets harder now.
Up to them largely.
Those fishing rods are under the table now.
Yeah. Now those closer and closer folks are going to be wanting you to send them a fishing rod. They're going to want at least a couple of those fishing rods sent to them as well.
Right. They're going to get some waders.
Okay, so what do we say then about someone in that kind of situation I'm talking about, where maybe not the exact situation I started with, where there's like, I can't take that much. I think that was to illustrate the general idea, but when you're in the situation where you have to give a price, because no matter how much you want the client to tell you their budget, sometimes they just won't. Or sometimes they'll tell you a crazy low budget. Sometimes when someone asks me, what's the budget? You just want to do something ridiculous, like say anywhere in the range of, $5 to $10. Just to like throw them off. Of course, that's not the real budget, but like, you're just like, come on, man, let's just talk. Talk to me. When someone has the urge to say less than they know they're worth, but they're afraid of not getting it, what What do you think what works for you? What do you do when that happens? I know you've had that urge.
Yeah, all the time. All the time. Well, I got representation, so I don't have to, but just kidding. That is one of the reasons why I actually got representation this time around. I wanted to see my value. So that is an actual bit of advice for illustrators. If that is something you're looking for, that is a part of representation that helps, is that they handle that and they know the industry and they can ask for higher prices because they understand all the minutia and all that stuff. So that's
Although,
that's
don't
a
you
whole
feel
thing.
like they cut out some of the really special things? Like, I feel like there's some really special projects. Oftentimes the ones people love the most are the ones that if you're negotiating with a rep, they won't do. And
they won't.
And that person just doesn't get access. Like, I can think of some opportunities you've had where I would suspect if they had to go through a rep, it would have never happened. And it's been some of the most fruitful things. I'm thinking of maybe I don't know, the national parks thing. That's been so amazing for you. I don't know where that started, but I wouldn't be surprised because you love that so much if that would have started at a lower price and it turned into something that I think you consider part of your legacy that may not have got through the filter of representation.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily saying everyone I'm not touting the fact that people need to have representation, because I had representation once years ago and it just ended very poorly and I swore it off, and I took it back up again last year with a great agency. And there's still things to navigate though. It's not perfect. It's definitely not perfect, especially after running my business for so long with my wife and just her and I doing everything. It was I just can't do it all right now. Crystal's not a part of it right now. Life gets more expensive. She took on a job that she's really good at and she likes with an ad agency in Florida. And so she's doing what she did for Brave the Woods there with them. And so I needed help. And I was like, I just can't go back to just handling all that. But I will say that
they do a great job.
They do. Yeah. But no, it isn't for everybody. And it's not perfect for anybody, I don't think. But going back to your question, I guess, about how what do I do in those situations? Outside of representation, I do talk to other artists. I think that's really, really important that people are transparent with each other, because when artists can talk about it, then you can be like, okay, am I crazy asking for this much? And they're like, I've never asked for that much. Doesn't mean that they're right or wrong, but I think it's good to get a few different opinions of people that you feel like you're in a similar boat. And I've done that before, and that's been really, really helpful and fruitful, because people don't typically offer that up just normally, typically. So you can, if you have good friends in the industry, I bounce prices off them all the time. And I've actually had projects where I took on and I was like, I told a buddy of mine and I was like, hey, I got this really cool project. And he's like, oh, was it this client? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, oh yeah, I turned that one down. And I'm like, oh crap. What was your price? And I was like, you couldn't afford them, so you went to me. Oh, and those hurt a little bit.
Though. You might be able to sense opportunities more. I think a lot of times it's just what you get paid that day or in that project is the tip of a much bigger iceberg. And sometimes it's a horrible iceberg. Sometimes it's an amazing iceberg. And
you take a leap out there and it ends up being 59 Parks. That's a great example. All the work I did for 59 Parks and I continue to do, I mean, I still get paid, royalties from all the different products and things that came from there, and which is fantastic. And I love JP. He is one of the coolest people. He's the owner and founder. And, but yeah, I mean, those kind of moments, I took less than after doing the project, I realized oh my gosh, this poster took so long. But I also had to talk to him. He and I talk all the time. He's very transparent about how much it costs, because it goes both ways. The client has to trust the artist, but the artist also has to trust the client.
Right.
I trust him implicitly. I know he's not going to screw me. I know he's not only offering me X amount of dollars because he thinks I'm only worth X amount of dollars. And he's told me that. He's like, I'm going to just tell you the logistics of all of this. I can't, if you want this to be printed 6 colors, screen printed by this amazing printer, and for me to package it in the way that I'm doing, I promise you, I'm not taking a ton out of your cut. I'm not taking a huge cut of this, and he's not. And he puts the artist first, and I trust him. So whatever he says, whatever the price is, it's worth it to me. And he knows, like, he's not going to lowball me, but he's also not going to pay a huge amount, but it's okay. Like what it's part of, like that artwork that I've created for him has gone on to have such a life, like beyond what I thought it would be. And it's brought in so much business. This last project with the Nature Conservancy, they're referencing the national parks. The maps.
And I know you're talking about, like, I think you gave me a poster of it. I think I have a puzzle of it. Is that the map you're talking about?
Yeah.
That looks like it took forever. It's really good work, but like, obviously we can't live off of kudos and good vibes from doing things like that poster. But like, I think it is worth considering, like, what is the means of the money? Like, money is like a transfer of, what is it a transfer of? It's like a transfer of it's a way of, I think, translating to get things you want, right? So you have to ask, like, I think I know you care a ton about the environment. You care a ton about very specific things. And someone like 59 Parks very much matches with that. And that poster took forever, but you love that. I see you reference it. I see you bring it up as one of the first things in your work all the time. You've given it to me as a gift. You're very proud of it. And I mean, I don't know how much that's worth. That obviously doesn't like feed hungry kids, but there's more, right? Like there's a value to it that, I think is worth considering. And I love the fact you mentioned, I think the first one was a group. So like, I know you're in Slack groups and things like that, or having friends and people that you can talk to reference money. And then you talked about how with like JP, you talked a bunch and he told you, sounds like he was really open with you. Here's the cost. Here's what costs this much. And is it unreasonable, you think, to give the advice to designers doing this or illustrators that they can do the same thing? Because I feel like, and maybe I'm missing something about this here, but I feel like if an artist comes to me and I say, this is what I can pay for this, and they say, look, I really want to do this. Here's what I do when I do this. And they tell me all the stuff that goes into how they do it. Here's who else I have that wants to do jobs with me, and they can pay me this. And I want to do this more, but and here's why I'm at that number. And I have to make that much to live how I want to live.
Do you like that? Would you?
I love that. Yeah. If they tell me that, I'm like, okay, I see where you're coming from. The same way that JP did. I don't think that like they have to be like, even with JP, I think if he was to tell you, he doesn't have to tell you he's living off of, cans of beans for you to be okay with the price. He could say, I have kids and, I have this house and I have these other passions and this is what my price is. And that sounds like a great foundation if both people are doing that. Because I think
if you can,
you tell someone that and they're not down with it, you don't want to work with them anyways. If someone's like, that's just too much and you just need to figure out a way around that, but you've been honest about what your life expenses are and how things work, then why are you working with them anyways?
I think it works in this scenario, like with JP and with you, because you are small business owners. I think I've seen that work with a lot of different people. When you're working with the major corporations, totally different, because people you're talking to aren't the ones making the budgets. They can be really sympathetic, but it doesn't matter. they don't make the decisions. So whoever you're talking to, like a lot of times in those, there's so many. There's so many layers of people that you have to talk to, so many layers of bureaucracy that you have to go through that it's not even worth doing that. I just try my best to be as excited as I can, even if I'm not. Sometimes you have to fake it because you want to get the job, but you want them to feel confident that you care enough about it. And I would never put like less effort into something if I'm getting paid for it. Like I put in equal effort for however much I'm getting paid. Which I think is an illusion for a lot of people. Like I tell that to a lot of clients. I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to put less hours in because, whatever. Like a lot of them with smaller companies, I'm like, okay, I won't put as much hours into this, but I will make something that you'll be proud of. I put the same amount of hours I put in for something for 20 grand. It's just who I am. It's really hard because it's me. I'm putting out work that represents me and my business, and I don't want it to be bad. And I want them honestly to have, they're paying for it. So I want them to have something. So I think with like larger companies, it is harder. That's where a rep comes in and is really nice.
Yeah, because man, they're predators. Man. I mean, not always, but a lot of the time they're brutal. Like I've tried to negotiate on licenses for our products, and they can be brutal and they're intimidating. I mean, in all honesty, if you're a small business and it's a gigantic company, that's one of those companies, you put on your site that say as seen, or used by these companies. We have some big companies. They're scary, man.
Yeah. So there's something I often tell creatives, like there's a game I grew up playing that I absolutely love. If you like the game Life, I do not like the board game Life for some reason, but I love the game Careers. And it's similar, very similar. And it came out, I think this late 60s, early 70s or something like that. It's called Careers. And you have to pick a career from the beginning. You have to pick if you're going to go to like whatever the career, or if you don't do college, or if you do college, similar to the Life, but you have at the beginning, everybody has their own roadmap to success. Everybody has their own. You all have to get 60 points. Whoever gets 60 points first wins. You get points for every, like everything you get. So there's 3 ways. There's 3 different point systems. You can get, fame, fortune, or happiness. So you have stars, hearts, and a money sign or whatever it is. And all along the board, like if you go down certain paths, they offer more money, right? Like if you're going more like, I want to go down like the rock star route or whatever, there's a lot more chances to get money. And so, but if you said, I put out of that 60, I put 40 of them as just happiness, but you went down a finance route, you're not going to find like that doesn't have very many happiness points down that path. So you're going to have a really hard time getting that. So you have to set up your life and your goals to meet up. And so everybody has different ones during the game, but you're all trying to get to your own goal. And I love that. I love that idea because I do that with art too. I have to put that into perspective. Like when a client comes to me with a project, they say, here's the project. How much does it cost? I'm like, well, what does this bring to me? Fame, fortune, or happiness? And how heavily is that weighted? That kind of idea, right? Am I going to get a lot of exposure from it and more work and more whatever? Or am I going to get a ton of money and I don't care about anything else because I'm just like, hey, I'll get paid. I'm getting paid, paying the bills. Or is it bring me some joy because it's something that matters to me? You have to weigh all those out, and that really dictates my price.
Yeah, but anyway. Yeah, you do. And I think that people get into that's a great analogy, by the way, because it's true. Like, especially the thing about like the fame thing or getting seen, I think that's gotten a bad rap. I mean, obviously there's times when people are like, you're going to get so much exposure, and it's almost like don't ever say the word exposure in terms of compensation unless you want someone to never return your emails again.
Exactly.
But it is true though, right? There are instances like where, for instance, like even with the 59 Parks thing, you said people reference it. When it started, it wasn't in Target. Now I think you see it in, Targets. I see it in little independent bookshops.
It's in REI.
I see it all over the place. I see it walking down like Mississippi Avenue in Portland.
Just like
in a little
down.
shop.
Oh, I thought you were saying you saw the artwork strutting down the avenue. I was like, wait, that's a weird thing to say.
I mean, I just mean like you see that everywhere, and like that's worth something. Like even if you didn't make anything from it, that would be worth. And of course you do, but if you didn't, that's really worth something.
That changes over time as an artist. I will say, I don't mean to cut you off, but that totally changes. Like when you're a young designer, I'm like, the exposure is like almost everything. Like money is important, but I have less to pay for. Like when I was younger, I didn't have as many kids. I didn't have as many stresses. I could be, or if I, before you're married or whatever, like you can get away with taking those things because you want to get that, like fame is more important or exposure is more important. And I didn't have a lot of opportunities to do that because I got married really young. So everybody's a little different.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. One thing I think is funny about anytime I hear podcasts about any subject where you're talking about giving people advice or telling things, you can never truly give them a great answer at the end, or a definitive answer that now is the problem is solved and there doesn't ever need to be a podcast made about that again.
We did it, Dustin.
Yeah, right. Like that doesn't happen. Speaking of that, there was a philosopher, something Wittgenstein or something. He literally wrote this like book of philosophy, and then he was like, "I'm done. Like that's philosophy has been solved." It was so crazy. And then like I think written? Ludwig Wittgenstein, I think is his name, and he was like, "It's been done. God. Like I've solved it." And then he did change his mind later, but that's not what happened.
What? No other podcast needs to be made. This is it. We did it.
I know, right? Yeah. Like it doesn't happen like that. But like, I do feel like from talking to you've talked to lots of clients. I've talked to lots of artists, designers, illustrators. One of the best things I think you can do, especially if you're struggling, is to get a lot of people under your belt early on, because
you mean clients?
Clients. The first times I was trying to work with people doing work, illustration or design or whatever for me, I was, hemming and hawing, I'm hand wringing, concerned about what's happening. And after you do it, the more you do it, the more you start to really be able to sense quite early what's happening. You sense it in how they're excited about it. You can sense in the numbers how true they're being about them. And there's no way to do that. It's kind of like Facebook ads. They always say, if you want to make money, you can make a lot of money with Facebook ads, but only way you're going to learn Facebook ads is by losing a bunch of money in Facebook ads. Yeah. No one goes into Facebook ads and for their business and runs them, and all of a sudden the money starts flowing in. People go in. It's like you went into a casino. They rob you of all your money, and you slowly learn, and then eventually you go in, and you start to leverage Facebook to make yourself money, or Meta, whatever they're calling it now. But there was one more thing I was going to add to that. I think also that something to remember too is that business owners typically have a different power dynamic than if you're an independent artist and you do. So for the person that might say, oh, no, let me do it for this amount. Don't forget that the person that owns the business is not living the same life as you. To some people, it may seem like $100 is crazy. That's my grocery bill for the week. I could never charge you that, but consider, don't always do this and assume this, because it's certainly not true, but consider that $100 for that person might be a fraction of their daily Meta ad spend. I think sometimes we get really caught in how we feel like a certain amount of money feels to us, and we assume that's how it feels to them. And that's not true. And you have to understand and that's probably why you need to understand your client, and you need to understand the business, and you need to understand the artist and where they're coming from.
That's so true.
I can't pay a ton, but I think sometimes they don't understand. I'm like, hey, I am running a business. It's making a living for me. It doesn't mean, I'm a gold mine to give you money.
Yeah.
But it does mean that I pay for stuff, and don't treat me like your aunt that wants a drawing done. It's more valuable. I wouldn't be doing it if it wouldn't make me money, and I'll tell you if I can't.
So pricing kind of feels like there has to be some level of understanding coming into it. Both sides, there needs to be some level of transparency. And again, I'm excluding the large corporations that you're talking to, where you're not talking to the actual person that's taking this money in. They're not actually paying for it, right? If you're talking to those people, then it's different. Then I think you still do the respectful thing. You try to be as transparent about your process and your timing and all that. You can still do a lot of those things, but I don't think it's fair to expect that from them. I think that's more of they're also the ones to give you a budget. Big companies, you can kind of bring it up to them and be like, hey, what do you guys have for this project? And sometimes, a lot more often, they'll offer it up, as opposed to smaller businesses don't. And I understand why. Yeah. But I have noticed that smaller businesses or just individuals who are hiring creatives and don't have as much experience in it or whatever, it tends to be the lower the budget, the more the pain in the butt the project is. Because, and it took me a while. When I was a young artist, I was offended by that. As the artist, I was like, gosh, you're not even paying me very much. Yeah. But it's important what you said. You said that the value of money is different to each person. And to them, they think, they don't know. A lot of them haven't even worked with an artist before. They're don't know even where to start. They don't know what the ballpark is. But also, that money it means so much more to them. If they're a startup, a small startup, or even starting a nonprofit, they don't have funds. So when they want to come to you and say, they want to start this project and things, you have to be understanding of how much it is. Because a lot of times it's frustrating when they have these low budgets. You're fine, I'll take it because it's a good cause, right? It's a good cause. So I start working on the project. And then you start reading oh my gosh, they are micromanaging every aspect of this project, and it's driving me insane. Where do they get off? They hired me as as the professional, and all of a sudden they want to be in blah, 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 blah. All those thoughts come in. And that earlier in my career, it really bothered me and I felt taken advantage of. But now sometimes that can happen because you can tell, but most of the time I'm like, they're invested because that money is a lot to them. It's not a lot to me. It's a lot to them. And I'm the dummy who took on the project. And if I really wanted to have this, and if I really did care about it, like I said I did, about the cause, then I need to just shut up and do it for the price I said, and just understand that they're going to be a little bit more difficult because they care. They're so closely tied to it. It's their baby, and they're paying you a lot of money to them, not to me, to them.
If you get the sense that they're in a position where it's like they're putting all their money down on a chip, hoping that this pays off, it's probably not a good client, because they're going to micromanage you. They're going to blame you for everything that goes wrong because they put all of their money on the bet. Oftentimes the bet that somehow art or design is going to determine whether something succeeds or fails, which is most of the time not the case. There's a lot more involved in something succeeding than the design. It's a lot of responsibility.
And you could speak to that.
It's like, for sure. You can have a brilliant artist do something. It will, of course, increase like your sales and your revenue and whatnot, but like it won't solve other fundamental problems. So if someone that's a great check on somebody. If it feels like somebody is communicating through, when you read between the lines, that a lot rides on what they're paying you, that might be something to really consider, whether you want to have that responsibility on you, because they are going to expect you to care as much as they care about making it succeed. And I think typically people tend to paradoxically operate better when they're relaxed. So if someone can come to you and you guys can come to a price together, and the person that's going to pay you seems pretty relaxed about it. Of course, they seem responsible. They're serious about it, but they seem like relaxed, like, they're not going to have their car repossessed if you mess it up.
That's
and
true.
Also the artist also seems relaxed about the money part. Like, please get this to me early. I don't know where I'm going to have my car repossessed. No good. At both parties, there should be a general, I think, sense of calmness, or else maybe you should really question how much you want that money and how much hard you're willing to work for it.
I've had that tension. That's a great point, because I've had that tension before between me and a client, just because I try to stick to my guns and I went with a price that was fair, but I knew it would stretch them. But I was like, at the point where I was like, I need to just start pricing what I'm worth. What I should have done is turned it down.
Yeah.
That's what I should have done. But I took it at the price, and they bent and made it happen. But man, there was a lot of friction along the way where they just were, like I said, micromanaging, really, like they were really the total scope creep. They passed what we were initially agreed, but they felt like they were owed that and all this stuff. And it was hard the whole way. And it's just not worth it. So I think if there's any takeaway, I know we need to wrap up our conversation here, but I feel like one of the biggest things I've learned is like, just try to get as transparent as I can with people, and try to talk to them about and if it's not like, you don't have to make yourself vulnerable to them, like screwing you over. I think when I say transparent is like, especially with big company, little company, you can give them the reasons for why you're giving the prices. And if you're honest about it, and you're really not, like, you're not hiding anything, you're saying like, look, you're asking me to do this over the weekend. I don't work over the weekend. I got kids. This like my time to see them and hang with them. I'm not going to, if you're making me work a weekend, that's why I'm doubling the price, or that's whatever the thing is. Like, that's why I'm doing this, or this is a stretch for me. I'm letting you know now that this is kind of a little bit out of my comfort zone. So I'm going to need more time, and you're going to have to be okay with me being a little bit more experimental. If you want, we can cut this project in pieces and say, let's do a contract for stage 1. And then if you like it, stage 2. I've done that before. And that's so much better because I was transparent about the process. That way they felt very comfortable saying, oh, I can cut ties. It's like, oh, I can turn off the free trial or whatever it is, or you start off at a certain price and it goes up if they like it. Right. So I've done that before, and those are all great ways to get the thing across. So you can negotiate all these things, but do it honestly and be able to try to get that rapport with them. Because if you could talk openly, that's the best route. The best route.
That is, yeah. So yeah, the big takeaway would be like invest in understanding people and in having a relationship with them. You don't have to be best friends, but in making sure that you can communicate with each other, that will solve most problems. I feel like the more I have open communication with someone I'm working with, that will solve most problems, because you'll filter out the few people that are very dangerous or not, just have bad intentions quite quickly. Sure. And then I love your idea of if you feel the urge to ask for less than you feel like you should, for whatever reason, consider breaking it up. Like, I think it's more than fair in some cases. Like, if you're like feeling uncomfortable about the price, you could always be like you said, hey, you know what? You seem like concerned about this part, or I don't know if I can do that, but what I can do is I can give you some sketches and some concepts, and I can do it for this price. And if you don't like them, no hard feelings. We can walk away. And if you like it, then you'll feel more confident investing into this more.
And you're proving your worth. You're proving, if you're confident enough in what you're doing, you know you're going to get the money. Like, I don't have any, I'm like, if I do it, I know they're going to love it and we're going to keep moving on. So I'm confident. So I feel like I get to do that, and I like that. It works.
Right. Yeah. And it does not, it could do anything where you're getting creative around it. If you're communicating with each other and you're coming up with solutions like that and they're receptive, that's all a good sign. I think it's a bad sign when it starts to feel like you're buying a house and things are going into escrow. There's if there's all sorts of like, contracts are obviously really a smart, responsible thing to do, but if it and you should use them, but if everything feels like it rides on weird things like that, the contracts should just be the kind of the official marriage of the agreement. It shouldn't feel like it's to cover your butt because everything's about to fall apart if you don't super glue it with a contract.
It's like a prenup to a marriage.
Yeah. You should get this sense from people like that you're not going to need it.
Yeah,
it makes me nervous when it feels to me like someone desperately knows this contract will be needed.
Yeah, they're like, feeling. It's really important that you sign this. Like,
right.
Yeah, you're right. That's a good point. It should just feel like, okay, and now we have to do the contract. Obviously, we have to do the contract and then do that, you know? And there's probably people that are real sticklers on their contract that are probably like, no, it's really, really important. Not devaluing a contract, but I do think you're right. Like, the mentality should be, the air about the conversation should probably be more excited about the project, less about, okay, these are very important parts in the contract we need to pay attention to the whole time. You know, if that dominates the conversation, I think that's probably a red flag.
Right. Well, thanks for talking about this, Ned. This was a great conversation. I would love for people that are listening to email us or leave us comments about, is it helpful when we talk like this? What did we miss that we could include next time? What should we talk about more? I would love to hear that because you do want to make sure that you're being helpful.
And I want to understand what you do, because this is just our perspective. I'm curious what other creatives are doing out there, and that's the value of everybody having some sort of community to chat with. So
all right, cool. Well, hey, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. If you're getting value from these conversations, consider joining our Patreon community. You'll get bonus content, early access to episodes, and help us keep bringing you the honest stories from creatives who figured it out. Check it out at patreon.com/creative/.